Oh, the BBC beclowned itself. Why is it that every big state-owned broadcaster in the English-speaking world's of the left, using the money of all taxpayers to preach the politics just of the left? Here we've got the ABC, of course, shocking. In Canada, the CBC. In the US, NPR, thank God it's only small. And in Britain, the biggie, the BBC, $6.5 billion a year from the taxpayer. Well, the BBC bosses decided, let's crack down on this bias. After all, the Conservative Party's already been hinting, now the left has hijacked it, why should the public pay? And so the BBC bosses decided to go after their biggest, their highest paid star, Gary Lineker, former England soccer player, now the BBC's top soccer commentator. Now, you think that Lineker would be an easy target. For one, there's a salary, $2.5 million a year. Surely his colleagues would be a bit jealous. Plus, is so ludicrously woke that he's even claimed he's faced racism as a kind of black man.
I think I would have been bullied at school. They were kind of marginally that way anyway, because I was like, this tiny geeky kid with darkish skin, and it was pretty much racist abuse. Although I'm as English as they come.
Really?
Yeah, all the time. Even in professional football, I had that a couple of times. I wouldn't ever name any names.
What a donkey! But what got really up the nose of the BBC bosses was that Lineker was having potshots of the Conservative government, particularly in a tweet attacking its policies of sending away the boat people now coming in from Europe. He claimed this is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by people in Germany in the 1930s. So apparently turning back people coming in from Albania or Iran is, at least in language terms, like what the Nazis did to the Jews, which shows what an offensive idiot Lineker really is. Joining me to tell how this exploded in the BBC's face is writer and commentator Esther Krakue. Esther, always great to see you. Tell me, the BBC last week, they suspended Lineker. What happened next?
So, unfortunately, we've heard reports that he's likely to be back on the BBC presenting Match of the Day next week. So the BBC's moral backbone lasted all 48 hours. But the main issue with Gary Lineker, other than the fact that his tweets were obviously ill-informed and it's in very poor taste to draw parallels with the government's policy on the small boats to Nazi Germany, is the fact that the BBC has to keep up this pretense that it is impartial to justify the license fee. Many countries have abolished their license fees, but the BBC still believes that it is some sort of neutral broadcaster for the state. And the issue is there's no such thing as neutral broadcasting. Journalism as an entity obviously has biases because people have biases, and it's fine to accommodate people's biases. But the issue is if you're forcing people to pay for this, if they don't want to listen to particularly left-wing or right-wing journalism or broadcasting, they shouldn't be forced to have to pay for it. So the BBC is kind of in an uncomfortable situation now because they have to find a way to justify this license fee. I will say, though, it is interesting that they are particularly riled up about Gary Neville's tweets with regards to the government's migration policy, but they had nothing to say when Gary Neville was harping on about the World Cup in Qatar and going on about Qatar's human rights record.
But look, the funny thing is, Esther, like the way this has played out has actually confirmed exactly what the BBC was trying to crack down on. They've given in because suspending Lineker, all his colleagues on the Match of the Day and all that, they refused to participate. They had to just screen the games without any commentary. It only lasted 20 minutes. All these other shows then got cancelled, etc., etc. I just say, so what? Knock yourself out. People can go and watch Sky UK or whatever. They've got B-Sky, what's it now? GB News, where you are as well at times. What's the big hassle? And the thing is, here are the staff rallying behind this idiot. I don't think they would have rallied around behind him if he'd said, well, Labor is weak and we're being overrun by boat people. I think they would have dropped him at sea himself.
Well, obviously, these people are claiming that they're bastions of free speech. But again, you've made the argument perfectly. If he said something that they fundamentally disagreed with, they certainly wouldn't have given up their cushy spots for the week's episode to protest in solidarity with him. So there's clearly a bias going on here. I think the biggest issue is the BBC needs to drop this pretense of its impartiality. But if they do that, then they know that the license fee is soon to follow suit. So it is quite an uncomfortable situation. They're all hypocrites, a lot of them. I mean, one of his co-presenters said, Just to be clear, I'm not going to appear on Match of the Day this week, but I hope to be back next week. So your moral values last all 7 days. It's just pathetic.
What a joke. Well, it just shows that the staff run the BBC and not the managers. I should have said you're also on Talk TV as well, or mostly. Listen, Esther, to another sports star, this one in the US, also playing race politics. Colin Kaepernick is the former NFL star. He kicked off the protests against the US national anthem before games, taking the knee instead. He's now out of sport. He's written a new comic book on his life in which he calls the family which adopted him as a baby racist. Here he is.
It's his true high school coming-of-age story, his journey embracing his blackness, despite resistance from many, including his white adoptive parents.
I know my parents love me, but there were still very problematic things that I went through. I think it was important to show that, no, this can happen in your own home, and how we move forward collectively while addressing the racism that is being perpetuated.
He took cues from his icon, basketball star Allen Iverson, who he said wore his blackness like a suit of armor. And teenage Kaepernick wanted cornrows to match. He's getting what roles, his mom asked?
Oh, your hair's not professional. Oh, you look like a little thug.
Your mom said that to you.
Yeah. And those become spaces where it's like, okay, how do I navigate this situation now? But it also is informed why I have my hair long today.
So Esther, his white parents are racist because they didn't like him growing his hair in cornrows. Fair enough to hang them out to dry in public as racist for that?
Well, I don't even think that is an instance of racism, and clearly the usual suspects have been keen to jump on this because they're happy to find racism behind every tree and every pillow that they're around. The issue here is about public perception. So if you were walking down the street and you saw someone in a hoodie and a balaclava, you have a public perception of that person to be linked to some sort of urban gang culture. That's not racist because that person could very well be white, black, or Asian. And I know in my own family, my brother is not allowed to wear his hair in cornrows because there's a public perception around that. Now, it's not racist to say that because it really does matter how you go out in public and how you dress and how you show yourself to the public really does have an impact on how the public perceive you. And for him to say that his parents are racist for that, well, if they were really racist, they wouldn't have adopted a mixed race baby in the first place. And I just think this is a sign of complete ingratitude, but also really misplaced grief.
And also they supported him in taking the knee. I mean, seriously, what disloyalty. Esther Krakue, Talk TV, thank you so much for your time.